that.
My favorite were those bubblegum cigars.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could get you got a whole big mouthful of bubblegum if you chewed one of them all up.
I never was a gum person. That would never interested me. I wanted the real deal. All that sugar, yeah.
A big chocolate bar. That was the best. But it was because my mom said we couldn't have the bubble gum.
Right.
So then it was more enticing.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to have gum at all. My mother was a hygienist, a dental hygienist. But boy, in Halloween, man, we packed the gum in. I mean, that was heaven.
Remember candy cigarettes?
Yes, I sure do.
Sure. Well, they still have Necco wafers?
I think they stopped making them. You can only get them.
No, they had them at CVS. I saw them at CVS the other day.
Really? Oh, I did not know that. I thought you could only get them in those places that sold like vintage candies, you know?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. They actually had Necco and it looked exactly the same. It's probably 10 times more expensive, but
probably.
or more. Everything was a nickel, right? Oh, jeez.
Oh, God, yeah.
Hello, Judy.
Hello. Unfortunately, I'm going to be going in and out a little bit. I've got this, we're still battling with the heating and the air conditioning.
No. Really?
And he has a full-time job, but he comes at night or he comes on the weekends, a side hustle, but he's very good. So, yeah. But anyway, it's wonderful to be with all of you when I can meet you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that it's not too cold.
Yeah,
So,
we have little radiators and my son brought in the meanwhile.
It's supposed to get warmer the next couple of days.
I know. This was a good thing. I know. Yeah. So where are we?
Who knows?
we haven't started, but
We are
Did you all vote?
63 it should be.
63. We are Psalm 63. And I think we'll find this is another one that we really like.
Oh, good.
Yeah, especially for.
So, did you push the right buttons tonight?
Yes. You mean for the broadcast?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm saying hello to the live stream participants in the class and welcome. We're glad you're here. We've been having a little discussion about Halloween, which is coming up. It's the big kids' favorite, or big kids' favorite. I think the adults like it as much as the kids do. I get it, but I'm too much of a thinker. So you can't think about it much. I don't understand the preoccupation with skulls and skeletons.
All right.
I don't know. I guess you drive by nowadays and people have 15 skeletons standing up in their yards.
That's right. They have a whole family of skeletons. The mother, the father, the kids, the dog.
Yeah.
Everything's a skeleton. Yeah. Well, you can buy them, and those 12-foot ones, you can buy them in the, like Lowe's and
Home Depot has them.
Yeah.
Like, okay. I don't get it. They're not in my yard. But we don't, we live on a dogleg street, and so we never have any kids come for Halloween. We don't, I would love to see the little kids in their costumes, but they don't come. And Franklin Lakes is actually discouraging any trick-or-treating at all.
Really?
Yeah, they had I was complaining, like a predictable pastor. They had the trunk-or-treat on Sunday. They did it already. It was Sunday at 11 o'clock.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah? Oh, come on.
Yeah, and then following the 11 o'clock trunk or treat, they had the Halloween parade of costumes.
There you go.
So that was like noon, and I just thought to myself, boy, we have just completely flushed the church out of culture. Like,
the Catholic Church has Mass on Saturday evening.
Right, so they don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But I don't know. I sound like a whining old person, but I just think, really?
Affected.
11 o'clock on Sunday morning, the town plans
That's crazy.
the event. Anyway, Nobody will
When
listen.
in Rome, maybe you should go to Saturday night
I've
on
tried it.
special occasions.
I've tried Saturday nights, and it's not real popular, believe it or not with Protestants.
Yeah, probably not.
I prefer church at night. I do. I prefer it. I like coming to church when the candles show up because of the darkness. And,
Yeah.
you come in, everybody's had supper. You come in, I don't know, somehow church is warmer. It's friendlier at night or in the evening. So I'm a big fan of it, but I did it in my previous church. We had 3 services a weekend, and the Saturday night church was nice, but it never really grew. It never took the place of 9:30 on Sunday morning. So, I don't know. So anyway, maybe we should try to read a little bit and see where we end up tonight.
Yep.
The commentary titles this psalm, "That which is better than life itself."
Oh,
Yeah.
Good.
So if someone would like to read, that would be great.
I'll let Debbie do since she did the long one last week on
oh, I
Wednesday.
get to do the short one now?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is a shorter one.
All right. Oh God, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. I will lift up my hands and call on your name. My soul is satisfied as with a rich feast, and my mouth praises you with joyful lips. When I think of you on my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I sing for joy. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. But those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given over to the power of the sword. They shall be prey, jackals. But the king shall rejoice in God. All who swear by him shall exult, for the mouths of liars will be stopped.
Okay, there it is. What do you make of it?
Well,
My comment is longing for God, a song of desire to be protected from enemies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful. I mean, it reminds me of some of the poetry that's in contemporary Christian music. A lot of which I don't really care for, but they take these phrases and put them to music, and I mean, there's so much confidence exuding from the writer. Confidence in what it means to really know and to live in the shelter of the wings of God. And as I was reading it today, I don't know. I'm grateful for the words. It just seems to me beautiful. The poetry is beautiful. Of course, we have our obligatory cursing and death to the people that don't like me.
yeah. Mhm.
And
But not too much of it, just a
No,
little
right.
soupçon of that.
Last paragraph.
yeah. I mean, it takes in by letting that creep in. The writer lets us know that his life is not a paradise. He's not. It's not that he has a charmed life. He has frightening things that are going on around him, and I don't know. I mean, we don't have to launch into reiterating all of our disappointment with the political environment that we're in. I'm just amazed that it seems like every chapter of the Psalms we've been reading, this issue of liars, people who tell lies, and people who are seen as dangerous because they are liars. And I just have never heard so much. I know it's always been here, but I've never heard so much about the theology that one of the most dangerous things in community, whether it's with your own tribes or whether it's other tribes, are people who use their mouths to tell lies. And how the lies are, they can scare you to death, but this psalmist is saying, he's living into the comfort that is provided by knowing God. And it just seems, I don't know.
Maybe the lines about liars and how they destroy the fabric of community is resonating now because of current events, and I think we're reminded of that.
Yeah, I think that over and over again in my life, I just, I've experienced this not just in this political climate, but how the previous community, I lived in Bound Brook for 10 years, and Bound Brook was a community that was crowded with undocumented immigrants. And for the most part, it was lovely. It was beautiful. And the one place where the beloved community was seen best was in the school, in the high school. Kids didn't even recognize the differences that there were between, the documented, the landed gentry and the unlanded ones. The kids, teenagers, high school kids knew how to live together in that oneness. But a hostility rose up among, I'm going to say, there were white adults who became threatened by the presence of these undocumented people. They hated the law in New Jersey that if you had an address, which means if you rented a house, then the town had to provide schooling for you. And there were people that went on the warpath to try to get that changed. They did not want to be paying for undocumented immigrants' children to go to school. And the rumors and lies that were told about the community, I don't know, it was so destructive. And it just, I don't know, it didn't just ruin the peaceable kingdom that we had that was there, but it ruined my life. It just destroyed a sense of wellness and happiness. And I don't know, who was suffering? There was nobody suffering in that environment. The undocumented people were cleaning hotel rooms, mowing lawns, painting, trimming shrubbery. They were doing all kinds of work to better the community. But there were people there who had to open their mouth and start lies and rumors about these people, that they were criminals. This trope that is circulated now about, how immigrants are, they're terrible people, they've come here, because blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's been going on. That was 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. What has so impressed me as we read all of this is that there's no change, that man is immutable. I don't know. That what existed so many years ago exists today.
Yeah.
What we talk about is relevant to what's going on today. Nothing is different.
No, that's right.
That it's just a different name and a different costume and a different language, but it's the same. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's disheartening. I guess that's the word that comes to mind. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I was looking for something more, altruistic, but it wasn't. I mean, there were instances of human beings, but for the most part, it's the same. I mean, because all of our references, it could be today what we're reading.
Yeah, it reads like today. It reads exactly. Now, the one thing I want to say is, and this is what I was thinking when I was reading it, then we need to read it fully for today. Because the Psalter here finds great comfort and hope and light and strength in spite of the similarity to the depressing and angering environment. This woman is not deterred in their confidence that God is with them, will shelter them, and that ultimately the lies that are told will run their course and they're going to be okay. And so I guess my point to myself was, okay, it doesn't have to be gloom and despair. Oh my gosh, we're the same terrible people today as we were yesterday. But God is the same God calling us to life and help and hope that God was back then.
Yeah.
And so that's what we need to hold on to.
Same. Yeah.
I mean,
The language that the psalmist uses here is really beautiful about, my mouth praises you with joyful lips when I think of you on my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night. That's when you really can connect. There's no other incoming distraction, and you can really discern what is uplifting in your life. And the psalmist says it's God who is the anchor through all the misery and the lying, that there's something there to hold on to, which I think is really beautiful.
I do too. And I think for all of us who are dismayed by the lying and the maligning and the terrible things that are said about people that we love and care about, my friends that are from Puerto Rico, I feel so bad for them. And they're so proud of their country, and they were so discouraged when the hurricane destroyed part of it. But, and then I think to myself, stop meditating on the lies and the destruction and get busy with what the psalmist is focusing on. Because the truth is, my friends from Puerto Rico, they're deeply Christian, and they're living in the shadow of the wing of God. They're not living into the pain and the awfulness of the lies. They're not. They can't afford to. They're used to the disparaging remarks and comments. So it's very uplifting to think of it that way, I think.
That's good. That's better. Yeah.
Liars do destroy community, though. Absolutely. And it is very depressing. And the fact that there were liars then, of course, and there are many liars now, the only thing that has happened to modernize the lies we have technology now that you cannot tell the difference between a lie and, what's truth, what's reality, and what is a lie. It's just so hard to figure that out now with with AI and all the stuff you see online. And you sometimes just have to stop and say, let's just put this out of mind and concentrate on what matters. Our personal relationships with people and God, put your trust in God, but it still can get you. I mean, if it gets this psalmist who's so upbeat to say still they're distressed by the lies, then you're never going to get away from it. Just put your trust in God, I guess, and pray that you can discern between the lies and the lying liars and what was the book? I can't think. There was a Al Franken book, The Lies and the Lying Liars Who Tell the Lies. And that was a good, 10, 15 years ago. It hasn't changed.
No, and I think to your comment about we all whine and complain about how technology has exacerbated the problem of, how do we know the truth when we hear it? But if you read, especially you read throughout the ancient texts and read in history, in the really ancient times, the slowness of communication was a disaster. because there would be lies that would be told, and there was no way to verify them. You know, you lived a lie, or you believed a lie, and you carried it around with you because communication was slow as molasses, and you had no way of verifying it. Now, you know, the lies come, and they live in our lives the same way that they did in ancient times. It's so hard. That one psalm earlier on was describing the environment. There is no one left who tells the truth. Remember? I mean, it becomes a source of believing that somehow, you know, the forces of evil and destruction have taken over the world. But the belief, people of faith come up against it, and they swim upstream against it. And even if they're tricked and they believe a lie for a little while, they're still grateful that God's faithfulness to be with them will redeem them, will set them free from the lie, will somehow vindicate them in their life if they just hold on to confidence that God is with them through it all, no matter how bad it sounds in the mouth of the liars.
I went to a lecture today, and I thought it was going to be worthwhile, and I finally walked out. It was called Making Important Decisions, and it sounded kind of interesting. And, okay, how do you make important decisions, and how do you decide what is important? And this person had been an FBI agent, and he'd worked with children's issues, and it sounded like it was an awful situation. But his basis was that it's not lies or truth, it's accuracy versus inaccuracy. Well, I really don't see the difference between accuracy and truth. And, he was basically saying that, I think he was basically saying everyone lies and you can't trust anyone. But, it was just very disheartening to hear that, this is, I think there's, when we hear lies, do we always know they're lies? No. But I think that to be able to discern what God's work is, I think it happened. We can tell. I guess I'm thinking emotionally, and maybe that's not the way you decide, and maybe it's not a very good way to make that decision. But people,
I think that that tying it into making decisions is right, because one of the reasons we want accurate information is so we can make good decisions. I mean, part of the reason lies become so harmful to us is because if you don't have the right information, then you're going to make decisions that you're really going to regret. And they may be about decisions about what other people are or who other people are. It may affect every layer of your life. So, the situation of my life for the last week comes rushing back to me because Laura and I have been trying to get her parents' house sold. And so we've been working day and night, an hour away, and we're making progress. And so we finally called a realtor. And the realtor came, and, how do you make decisions? I make decisions by intuition. I do. I trust my intuitive sense over and over and over again. And so we interviewed this person, and I intuitively really liked her. I liked her style. She impressed me, seemed very dependable. And so we signed up on a Thursday night. On Friday morning, she called and said, I haven't even listed it yet, and I have a buyer. And we were like, what? And yeah, we have a buyer. And she said, or we were disappointed in a way because we wanted to get a bidding war going. And they took the first price, and she was saying, forget about that. Don't do that, because you've got bird in the hand's worth a potential of 3, coming along. and by the way, and here's the key phrase. I'm sorry for the long story. The key phrase was she kept saying over and over again, these people have cash. These people are going to come to closing. They want to close right away, and they have cash. They don't have to wait for a mortgage, nothing. Well, so the point of telling you that whole story is she lied. She lied to us about the buyers because the truth is they had to wait not for the mortgage for us, but they had to wait to, they were selling a house.
They were selling, yeah.
And she
How
lied.
how did you find out that she was lying?
Well, because we tried to put language in the contracts, you know, you write the contract up, and we have a pretty sharp lawyer. And our lawyer saw some phrases in the contract that she was suspicious of. And she said, I don't know why this phrase is in here. I don't get this. And so she checked it out. Turns out she knows their lawyer, so she called her up. They're friends. And she said, what's the deal with this? And then the other lawyer explained the truth, which is they can't close until they get a mortgage, until the buyers of their house get a mortgage.
Right.
And all I kept saying, like, you know, I get in a rut. In my mind, I think in a rut, and I need to be rescued from the ruts. But my rut was, I can't believe she lied to us. Like, I just can't believe it. She lied to us.
What did you do? Did you decide not to go along with her, or
No,
did you?
our lawyer told us that because we had retained her as the realtor, we couldn't get rid of her for a month.
Right, there's an exclusivity
Yeah.
that she has, yeah.
And so, you know, that
She was smart, but not honest.
No, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. She was not honest. And she knew that if she had been honest with us, we would have said, well, they can get in line. You know,
Right.
put it on the market, they can get in line. But
Yeah.
here's the thing. She was their realtor. So she was selling their house.
Right.
And I mean, I don't, it just, it, I gotta tell you, you'll have to tell me to calm down.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it's the same thing that the psalmist writes about. You know, can you turn nowhere and have people just be honest with you? Especially when you're depending upon them. You know, they're your agent. And I think, okay, you get all wrapped up in that, you get all broiled up about how things are, or read Psalm 63, you know, and listen to what the psalmist is saying.
Yeah.
You know, take some time when you lay down tonight, Lou, and count your blessings, as they used to say. You know, look around in your life and see the goodness of God and the goodness of life. And I think this happens even with people who don't have 5% of what I have. You know, a lot of times the people who don't have anything are better at this transition in life, away from the disgruntledness and away from the discouragement, into living into the confidence of that God is with them. And so I don't want those obstacles. I want to be that too. I want to say, well, you know what? If I quote the psalmist, I'll go, well, I hope you don't trip too soon, because when you fall down, you're going to fall down into Sheol, and the heat is really bad down in there. Right?
Oh, yeah. The only thing you can say is, you know, you still have your asset intact.
Yeah.
And if the deal falls through, you can always put it on the market and sell it maybe for more, because it's actually a seller's market right now. May a good thing. And it may go through, who knows? But
Yeah.
it's hard when it's a very stressful thing. And when you feel like people are lying to you,
Yeah.
it does wreck your day.
Yeah.
It really does.
You still have to work with them.
Yeah, and I say it's that experience of life that why, you know, the casualty of war is truth, right? Isn't that what they say? First casualty of
First
war,
casualty, yep.
right, is truth. Because truth dies in times of war and conflict, and then it allows the war to go on. It allows all these rumors and ideas about people. I think I've said this before. When I was a younger person, my brothers were in Vietnam, and one of the things that went around, I don't know who actually started it, that I heard it, but they were talking about how many Vietnamese were being killed in Vietnam, you know, and my brothers were over there, and they weren't quite on the front lines, but it was scary to have them be there. And I remember, I don't know if it was a friend of my parents, but what they said was, yeah, it's particularly awful for people from the United States to be at war with the Vietnamese, because in the United States, we value the individual's sacred life.
Right, but
And
they don't.
Right, that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
The Vietnamese, they don't care. Like you can kill 10 of them and they don't care because they don't value human life like we do. And I thought to myself, and I know that was a rhetoric that went around a lot, you know?
Oh, it still does. About every other country in the world, we have this myth about Americans valuing life more than anyone else.
Right.
And it's what allows you to treat other people's lives very casually. You know, you can go and my husband was a Vietnam vet too. And a lot of that stuff too with the casualty numbers. You weren't supposed to worry about the casualty numbers. Of course, the American casualty numbers, but don't think about the Vietnamese,
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
And they were always inflated. McNamara always inflated them anyway, so they didn't mean anything. We were being lied to all the way through.
Yes.
The guys on the ground over my husband was in the Riverine, they called them the Dirt Water Navy. They went up and down the rivers, you know, bringing supplies, picking up personnel, and occasionally getting shot at and shooting back. And at one point, they knew where they were. They were in Laos. They were not supposed to be there,
Right.
but they were there. And there were a lot of lies about what we were doing and how we were doing it. And a lot of that, you know, don't worry about the Vietnamese we're killing by, you know, however many. They don't matter. Their lives don't matter. And of course, people who are over there understand that that's not true.
Right, it's not true.
It's not true.
And it was like one thing to be an American who thought their lives did matter, but we were being told a rhetoric that said their lives don't matter to them. Their lives don't matter to them. Who invented that lie? Who dares to try to tell that lie about any human being in any part of the world? I mean, a mother bear cares about her young. You think that a mother doesn't care about her children or her husband or her family just because they're Vietnamese or they're Chinese? What is wrong with us?
Well, we see that in terms of the misinformation we're getting today about the Palestinians. You know, you read in the paper 40,000 and then 14,000 and you have no idea.
No.
And even the news, you know, hospitals are being bombed. No, they're not. You know, people being evacuated. No, they haven't been. I mean, it's all over. And so where do you?
And it depends on where you get your news from too, because you know, now I'm not going to say anything. I don't like the regime in Israel, but you know, we've been acculturated to think more about the feelings of the Israelis. So if 1,400 Israelis get brutally murdered, you might know most of their names. They'll be posted. It's more personal. But when 40,000+ Palestinians get bombed to hell, it's like, well, you know, nobody names the names. We're lucky we see anything of it. And it's like there's two different values on life.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't think that's the fault of Americans. It's our bias in the news that gets, you know, so where do you go for truth? It's hard to discern truth in this case. Is there terribleness on both sides? Yes.
Yeah.
There's humanity on both sides too, and it should be respected, but it's just not happening.
And I think that's
And
why.
Americans, you talk Americans, Native Americans, their lives were never considered, or blacks who slaves, their lives were never considered to be of any value. You know, so we have this ingrained in us that it's unless it's us.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting, Barbara, because right now, of course, Biden is apologizing to the neighbor.
Right.
First
Right.
time ever
Yes, yeah.
an apology has been
The
made.
schools, the Native American
Forced marches and separating the children, and I mean, all of that awfulness. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's standing up, he's apologizing. Yeah.
And, you know,
I saw him on, this is not completely, but it's Biden. People are saying awful things about the man. There he is this morning, he went to vote. He's standing on line with everybody else. I think I know one other person who would never do that.
Yeah.
But Biden is standing on line in this long line, and while he's there, he's actually pushing an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Come on. And then you're going to turn around and say the guy has no, human feelings. You can't, I mean, there's no comparison with him and this other dude that just makes a mockery of humanity and feeling human kindness. And I don't know. It's just awful. It does make you depressed.
It does. It really does.
yeah, I got a phone call today from the funeral home in Hawthorne. I know the funeral director there, and they called me when they know if I would do a funeral on Saturday. And I said, sure, just send me the obituary and the information. And I looked, and the woman who died was 68 years old. And so I got on the phone, I called her husband, and I said, I introduced myself, and I said, what happened? And he said, she killed herself.
Oh.
And I said, what do you mean she killed herself? She's 68 years old. I said, did she have like a cancer or something? He goes, no. And he got kind of animated with me on the phone. He goes, you know what she had? She had anxiety and depression. And it was being exacerbated by everything that's going on. And she said, I'm going to tell you. He goes, I'm going to tell you something. People don't believe it. They don't believe the casualty of this time in which we're living through, and the anxiety and the worry, the worry that, the United States is coming to an end. It's all that, all this stuff. And he said, and then to make it worse, I'm her husband. I tried to do what I could to reach out to get help. And he goes, when you're having an emotional crisis, emotional health crisis, and you call the crisis line and you tell them, look, my wife is I think she's severely suicidal, and they tell you, well, we'll have an appointment for you in 4 days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but it is true. I know for myself, I always used to watch NPR or PBS. I don't watch any news anymore. I do read the New York Times each day, but even that, I have stopped, I've stopped really reading it slowly, carefully, the way I used to. And now I just turn the pages because I'm finding it, so terribly disturbing. That you know what I did? I went to my library shelf and I took out The Wind in the Willows. I took it off my shelf. And I started reading about mole and badger and rat and mole, and I needed some kind of that. And then Where the Wild Things Are, Maurice Sendak. I mean, it's just something so completely apart. But it is terribly disturbing. I don't ever remember, a time when news could really viscerally upset you.
yeah.
And we have to stay, and, I have, and I know some of my friends, we stop doing the things in order to be informed, intelligent citizen, because it's just, it's too shattering. Much.
That's why it's nice to have Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is.
There you go. And don't worry about giving the kid 10 pieces today. Just let him eat it. Come on. And you have some too. I don't know. You gotta do something sometimes, like Judy says, do something that reminds you of a happy time, maybe something from your childhood or something like that. Yeah.
I have the book beside my bedstead, The Wind and the Rose, and I'm reading, all about these little animals, that represent, of course, the aristocracy, some, in England. I don't care. It's fun. The language is fun. The ideas are topsy-turvy. You just want to get away, from what's happening today. Yeah.
That's why I think the psalmist, as I remember you upon my bed in the night watches, I meditate upon you. For you've been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I have shouted for joy. Finding something in the middle of it, in the middle of the night. I came home from, I don't know where I was all day yesterday, but I was working. When I got home, Laura was watching Looney Tunes. Because her favorite thing in the world is Donald Duck and Daffy.
I believe it, yeah.
And so, I'm sitting there and I look over at the television, she's watching Looney Tunes. And, it fits in.
You go back to a childhood of innocence, and things that made you laugh and smile and giggle. And because you need, to do that because it's so omnipresent, that what's going on. Yeah, it's terribly disturbing.
So we are called upon once again by the psalmist to turn to whatever it means for us to meditate on the goodness of God, to purposefully turn our minds and hearts. So we can complain about other people lying to us and leading us astray and all the rest of it, but we need to take responsibility for what's happening in us. We need to get in front of some of it, and we know better. We know. We can recite prayers. We can read the encouraging psalms. We can take a while and do an inventory of the blessings of God in our life. We do not need to be the victims of people who want us to be full of despair. We don't. And I'm aware that's like, okay. I think that's really good for us to do that. It's a good thing to be informed. We don't need to be ignorant, but we also don't need to allow others to take charge of our sense of well-being. We don't.
And I think that happens a lot now. The other day I opened up the paper and I saw the word on the front page of the Times, sloppy, that the presentation was, and I resented. Don't tell me how to think that the presentation was sloppy. Just tell me about the presentation. Right. What backs the presentation, but don't color it with. And I see that a lot now with more adjectives and adverbs, and telling you how to think. And it's so unacceptable. I mean, yeah. So it's everywhere. Yeah. People telling you how to think, how to feel, Oh, so maybe it's God and humor. I don't know.
Well, I think it's learning to know how to
discern,
to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And knowing how you should know yourself. You should know who you are. And in knowing who you are, exercise. If you forget who you are, then journey back into knowing who you are. Again, that was the psalm last week. Remember what you've been told. Rehearse what you've been told. Say it to yourself again. The outcomes, they can be bad. They can be. But in the end, the outcome is not going to be you without God in this world. It's not. And sometimes it has to get darker before the dawn comes. There was nothing I would love better than if we went through a very down and bad period of time, and this country, this relatively new nation, learned important lessons that it could incorporate into doing it differently, and discover the treasure of our multinational, multi-ethnic, multiracial identity, and seeing that the rest of the world looks at us and thinks it's amazing that we have an energy to try to be one nation. and to remember not to let that fail.
Right.
It's if that fails, we all fail. If that if that goes down, we all go down.
Yeah.
And the danger now of trying to make us a more Christian nation with these evangelicals and how they're interpreting Christianity and God. I mean, that's so dangerous now. And that's now part of their whole, platform. Yeah.
They've been banging this issue around for 50 years. I remember my dad, he was sort of an evangelical, but he didn't fit in with this, let's take over the government, let's rule the world. Because at the time when I was in high school, the real Christians in the community were rallying people to go up to the high school and to protest against sex education. They really, 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 they hated the fact that, non-Christians were going to be teaching sex education. And they tried to get referendums passed, and they always wanted my father to go and to speak. And my father was like, no, I'm not doing it. It's not my call. And as far as abortion, when abortion was first talked about 50 years ago, my father, I can still remember him saying, my belief is there a morality to abortion or no abortion? Yes, there is. He believed there was a right and wrong thing to do. But he said, you cannot legislate morality. You cannot. So the idea of passing a law against abortion was insane. And he knew, and it's true, that when abortion has been illegal, coat hangers came into big demand. And people did abortions in back alleys, and people paid for, abortions to be attempted on their body, and then they died. Is that a higher moral standard?
Yeah.
And
even back then, though, if you were having a miscarriage, you could still get a D&C, which is an abortion.
No.
Because common sense said we don't want to lose the mother,
right?
So we'll do the right thing, and that was never an issue. Now, with the zealousness of these folks who are so against it, you can't even save the mother's life, or her fertility for further family. It's like, what is wrong with people when they go too far over the edge?
That's right.
I don't know, but.
And then when I was in college, I was a philosophy major, and I took a medical ethics course. And one of the issues that we did a segment on was abortion. And we had a big class debate about pro-abortion or anti-abortion. And, I was a pretty energized student when I was in college. And I was assigned anti-abortion. We got, sides assigned to us. And so I argued vehemently for abortion being illegal and all the rest of that. And I remember the chaplain, who was a great friend of mine, Bruce Thielman, he was sitting in on some of our debates because he always had opinions about it. And he said, come on, I want to take you out to lunch. And he said, you know what, my problem with these ethical debates that you're having? And I said, what? And he said, no one knows what they're going to do in these situations until they're in the middle of it.
Okay.
And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the professor that is leading this discussion, and he came out so strongly on anti-abortion. He said, about 3 weeks ago, they found out that his wife was pregnant. But when they did the tests, they found out that the child was going to be born with Down syndrome. So they snuck off to get an abortion. And yet in public, he's still clamoring for abortion to be illegal and immoral. And so the chaplain says to me, what are you going to do when human beings are like this? What are you going to do? These senators who are so high and moral, passing these laws against abortion, they're going to have affairs, and their side woman is going to get pregnant, and they're going to find out a way for her to get an abortion.
Right.
It's just, I
Well, it
don't know.
goes back to the lies again, right?
Yes, we've come full circle back to the lies.
The public lie and the private lie, yeah.
And lying for particular reasons to create a certain face.
Right.
You know, and I've told you before about colleagues of mine who are so earlier in this century, so anti-gay and so, you know, preaching from the pulpit about, you know, how the evils of homosexuality and it was a sign of the decay of our society. And then they're people I know, and eventually I find out that they're gay. Like, I want to fall down on my face and just swallow in the mud for a while. Like, what are you doing? Why do you do this? Why do you lie like that and then make other people's life hell? And then you have the benefit of having it be a secret in your own life. What is that about? And I'm not the kind of a person who, when I found out, especially with two of the pastors that I knew, who, one guy, I think I told you, you know, I found out he was having sex in the park. He used to go down to the park, and there's this thing, you know, there's a known thing among men who are looking for stranger sex. And he would go into the park, and he would have sex, and, you know, and then I found out about that. Did I ever tell anybody? No. I didn't tell anybody. I just, you know, just leave him to his own sick soul.
Right.
Like, I don't,
Well, it's like the lies that, again, are being told in public that then many of the establishment Republicans are for this man, Trump. And yet in private, you know, they talk about him
right.
So then one wonders, what are they going to do when they get into the voting booth? You know, which part of them, was the lie part of them or the other lie part of him? You know, who's going to press the lever, you know?
Well, I think a lot of them, while they may be appalled with who he is, they still think their bread is buttered on his side of the toast. And so they'll go ahead and vote for him. They'll go ahead and stay in the boat with him, hoping that somehow it'll turn out to be better for them because he's a Republican. And that's the group think, the group speak, the group act that is a part of the way politics works. Yeah. You know, just...
And then they sell their soul like Giuliani. You know, one day, you know, is crawling around crying for money, and the next day he goes to this Madison Square Garden thing and talks about how great, you know, Trump is. I mean, it's every day.
Well, from what I understand, the two poll workers that he attacked are now living in his $6 million penthouse.
There is justice. There is some justice in this world.
That is so sweet.
They even got his Babe Ruth or one of the baseball greats jersey or something that he enshrined in his home, and they got his fancy antique car and all his belongings. I hope they sell them right away because they're probably tainted, but they get the benefit. And you think, well, gee, there is some justice.
Exactly. It's encouraging to hear that. And it's not quite like the psalmist who wants them to fall into hell and burn in hell. But, you know, if I could just, you know,
Pay.
Yeah, that's right. Make them pay. They got to pay.
And yet the source of all this nonsense is going away scot-free.
Yep.
I know.
I don't know.
Can only hope that karma will still eventually catch up.
Yeah. Oh, well. And yet God is forgiving. If he asked for forgiveness, I'm sure God would say yes. Okay, if you're sincere, I give you forgiveness.
I guess. But, you know, think about Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus climbed up in the tree, went home with Jesus, had a conversion moment, and returned everything he had taken into spoil. You know, he said, if I've despoiled anything, I'll give it back. And I bet you there was a line of people who were saying, okay, how about mine? Where's mine?
Exactly. Oh, gosh. Oh, well.
I think it's in the Psalms. At one point in a reflective psalm, one of the psalm writers says, you know, why is it, God, that the righteous suffer and the unrighteous go on multiplying their wealth and you know, all the benefits of life seem to be disproportionately doled out to benefit those who just don't give a damn about decency or anything like that. But you know, Jesus said, well, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. You can't make up your mind about who's on God's side by looking at those kinds of things.
Well.
Yes.
You can always watch The Daily Show tonight and have a laugh.
Yeah, that's right. That's a joy. I've been watching all the old ones. I've been going back. I like all of the comedians now.
Yeah,
And
they're
particularly,
good.
I like the woman. I like her, I don't know.
Desi Lydic.
Yeah, Desi, I like her bit. I like her way. I like her sarcasm.
Exactly.
It's beautiful. Just does my soul good.
Jon Stewart says he's coming back for the whole of next year, so
Oh, good.
yeah, he's just on Monday nights, but at least he's, you know, not gonna leave altogether. He's gonna be back, so I mean, Monday nights, his righteous indignation is just unbelievable.
It's beautiful.
You can tell that he's funny, hilarious, but underneath you can see the anger
Yeah.
and the disappointment.
Yes, and I
So
love
I
it.
can really relate.
Yeah,
You know?
me too. Me too. All right, well, we'll say goodnight for tonight, and we'll pick this up again when the Psalms next week, and then I'll see you all tomorrow. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good
For,
night.
Good night.
good night. Thanks for being along for the journey tonight. Judy, we're
Thank
saying
you.
goodbye. We're saying goodnight. Okay.
Hope you get your heat back, Judy.
Yeah.
I just went to check he's still, and now I'm learning about coils and air handlers and compressors and all those wonderful things. Yeah. I didn't know that I had